election, presuming that he's the candidate. People have a great ability to rationalize why their party skunk is better than the other party's skunk. So I imagine a lot of those voters will go to vote for Trump because they aren't engaged in politics that much, and they're going to vote for their team, and that is the Republican Party. The biggest problem that Trump has is not that they're going to go over and vote for Biden, but that they just won't show up. And turnout, I think, is really going to be the key issue in determining who wins the election this fall. It's essentially a replay of almost the last two presidential elections. And turnout of a few percentage points in key states makes a difference between who wins and who loses. And if, say, 5% of those Republican voters who voted for Haley don't show up in November, Donald Trump will lose.
So where's your head on this race, Andrew? We left New Hampshire talking with you about a general election that was already beginning. It's really looking like one now. You've got Trump and Joe Biden both at the border on the same day. They're now referring to each other directly. How long can this last for Nikki Haley as, you know, the potential alternative? She's in there just in case something goes wrong with the Trump campaign, it seems. But when does that start to look ridiculous?
I think you're right that she's in there in case something happens, but that means that you're campaigning where you're relying on something that's completely out of your control. And that's not a good place to be in. My sense is this, her campaign is really all over but the crying, to use a phrase. She can stay on until Super Tuesday, see when the money runs out. I think that's going to be the key issue. But to the point of your last guest, that I think she is somebody who the Republican Party, or kind of the mainstream of the old Republican Party, is looking forward to as a potential candidate in 2028, presuming that Trump is already the nominee this time around. So she can go on for a little bit more, but I just don't think she really has any avenue to winning the nomination unless something really dramatic happens to Trump. And I don't even think that's a conviction in a court case. I think it's going to have to be something, a health-related thing or something that really prevents him from being able to run.
So when you see polling, like some that we've conducted here at Bloomberg with Morning Consult, that suggests that voters, specifically swing state voters, would be less likely to vote for Trump if he were to be convicted of a felony, you don't necessarily think that matches reality?
Well, it may match reality right now, but again, the election's a long time away and people are not in an election framework. By the time the election comes around, you're going to have so much mud thrown by both of these candidates that I have a feeling that both parties are just going to hold their nose and vote for the R or the D, not necessarily for the candidate who's running. It's really way too early. We've not seen an election like this where the nominees have been identified this early on. Where there's really not much going to be going on between now and then, except a battle between the top two people that's just going to get uglier and uglier. And maybe that's what I fear it's going to get, but it's not going to be something that's really illuminating and a sparkling example of American democracy.
We're spending time with Andrew Smith, political scientist and head of the UNH Survey Center. When we were in New Hampshire with you, Andrew, the idea was that this state was unique because of the independent vote, that if Nikki Haley were to outperform anywhere, it would be here. Her campaign pointed to South Carolina in the same way. What did we learn from the demographic breakdown and the party breakdown in the Palmetto State here to try to gauge success and failure moving forward?
Well, Haley has done okay with the protest vote. Essentially, Trump is going to get the majority of the mainstream Republicans, registered Republicans, and Haley's had to rely on people who are not the mainstream part of the party. And obviously getting 40% of that, frankly, is pretty good. And she got over 40% here in New Hampshire, which is pretty good, but it's certainly not enough to win. But I think the problem that we have to look at this is that Trump hasn't been able to win convincingly really anywhere. He's won, but he is, as you say, he's the incumbent. He should be able to win this by 80 to 90%, like Biden is able to do against, say, a Dean Phillips. What that tells me is that you've got just a deeply divided Republican Party that wishes it had somebody else, but it doesn't see that there is any alternative to Trump at this point.
Andrew, you just mentioned that Biden has been able to secure 80 to 90% of the vote. Do you think he'll be able to do that in the Michigan primary tomorrow, knowing that Arab Americans specifically there are suggesting they will be backing uncommitted instead of the president because of the issue of Gaza and his role in supporting Israel in that war effort against Hamas?
Yeah, I think Biden will be fine in the primary election. The Arab vote is very important, but it's important in just a few places in the state. And in a very close statewide election, whether or not they show up and vote is going to be a difference. But in a Democratic primary, I think Biden has all the controls of the party establishment itself. So I think he'll win handily there in Michigan.
What does it tell you when you start to see the money turn here, Andrew? This is a big headline for Nikki Haley. Koch brothers' money is going down ballot, which was really helping to breathe life into her ground operation specifically. She's not going to have that moving forward now. You're used to people asking you every 4 years when people are going to drop out. Give us the anatomy of the end of this campaign.
Well, you stop running when the money runs out. That's the ultimate truth of it. And I think the money is slowing down dramatically. And in fact, Haley needs so much money to counter Trump. In fact, I don't even think there's an amount of money that she could spend that would really effectively counter Donald Trump, because he is so well known to the electorate and to the Republican primary electorate. To convince them otherwise, I think there's almost no amount of money that could make that case. But she's not going to have the money just to keep the people going in her staff for too much longer. So I think that she's likely to go through Super Tuesday. She's been pretty honest by saying that she says she was going to be in South Carolina. She's there. She said she was going to be there at Super Tuesday. She's likely going to be there, but I just can't see her really practically going on much longer than that. About half of the delegates are going to be awarded on Super Tuesday, and it's going to be hard for her to win just anything but a fraction of those.